we just had the Belgian Grand Prix. Well, kind of. We had cars on a track. We had a lot of rain. Racing never really happened. They did a couple formation laps behind a safety car, which was technically enough to count it a Grand Prix, but it was not an exciting, entertaining race. It was very unfortunate. And I guess there's a rule where if you drive more than 2 laps, but less than 75% of the race, then you can get half points for the Grand Prix. You can count the race technically as having happened. And so the entire race was token. They literally did 2 laps behind, or I guess a little more than 2 laps behind a safety car to make it possible to call that a real race and move forward with their season. I don't know. There were no overtakes. There was no... the finishing order was just what happened in qualifying, other than Sergio Perez crashed before the race could even happen. So he ended up at the back of the pack rather than in the top 10. The rain was pretty wild. It reminded me of one of my favorite movies, Rush. That's the story of James Hunt and Niki Lauda. The Fuji scene, if you know, you know. If you've seen the movie, you get what I'm talking about. So the rain was crazy. Shout out, by the way, to Crofty and Martin Brundle for these 2 broadcasters talking for like 4 hours over a rain delay, just doing the best they can to be interesting and entertaining in a terrible situation. I don't know how you broadcast for 4 hours with basically nothing to say other than, wow, it's raining again. Can you believe it? Shout out to them. I think they don't get respect for what they did. It's really hard to carry a conversation by yourself for hours, even with someone else for hours about nothing really going on. And one of them said, I don't remember which one of them it was, but one of them said like they've never seen rain like that. And they've been watching races in Formula One since the 60s. And you're like, wow, that is pretty crazy to hear. So nothing really happened. I felt bad for the fans. They were the real champs. The fans were sitting in the rain, in the pouring rain, just hanging on, hoping they would get a glimpse of something that actually happened in Formula One. It was so bad that when the guy who drove the safety car, I forget his name right now, I wrote it down somewhere, I don't have it. I know Burt Mylander. When Burt Mylander put on his crash helmet, that got cheers at the track because of how little was actually going on. And so Lewis Hamilton said it. I do agree with him. Lewis Hamilton said he hopes the fans get their money back because they really did not get at all what they paid for. Although there also really isn't anyone to blame. I mean, normally I'd say, well, screw Formula One, screw the FIA. They did that, but they didn't screw over the fans. The rain did. And you just could not race in those conditions. Maybe you give their money back. I think that'd be a goodwill gesture. Probably won't because money does talk. But visibility was too low to race. Like, you can't race in that condition. It's in the middle of the pack where you have spray from cars in front of you. Like, you couldn't see anything. And so I get why there wasn't a race, but I just felt bad for all the fans who went and were there and didn't actually get to see anything. Now, there are 2 positives from the Belgian Grand Prix. Number one is this. Let me drink some water. We'll get to it in a moment. Here was the first positive from the Belgian Grand Prix. Number one is it brought the battle closer together for the Formula One title between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. So Max Verstappen, with half points, got 12.5 points for getting first place. The top podium finish. Ooh, they did nothing, but they got it. Lewis Hamilton got 7.5 points for third place. So now the gap has been closed even more. Lewis Hamilton now has only a 3-point lead over Max, a weird-looking 202 points to 199 points. Sorry, 202.5 points to 199.5 points in Formula One. A 3-point gap now. Odd with the half points, but nonetheless, it does make things even more interesting that the gap has been closed even more between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Now, the second only positive thing you can really walk away with from the Belgian Grand Prix is this. George Russell got his first ever podium, and that's just very, very cool. I really don't care how it happens. It's a super cool moment for George Russell, his first ever Formula One podium, one he's going to remember for a long time. It was actually pretty funny. They said, it's the first time George Russell and Lewis Hamilton have ever shared a podium, and they might be teammates next year, so they probably will share a lot more podiums moving forward. And more crazy, and again, I don't care how it happened. I know there was no real racing, there was no overtakes, nothing like that. George Russell got a podium in a Williams car in this era, which is unbelievable. And again, it is also, again, ironic that he did it without actual racing happening. Like, only George Russell could make that happen. But still, he earned it. Remember, George Russell qualified in second place. And everyone else had a shot to beat him in qualifying, and only Max Verstappen did. So even though there was no race, he still qualified second. I thought to some degree he earned it. I love seeing that. Weird way to do it. But the wet conditions were the great equalizer. And that's the only time we will ever see a Williams car in the modern era beat a Mercedes and get a podium over a Mercedes car. That's just unbelievable to me. And I don't know how you cannot be happy for George Russell. It's hard to be angry about that. It's a very feel-good story. Even if the race was, quote-unquote race, if you can call it that, even though the race was uneventful, I felt like moving forward it was good because it brought the title battle even closer together between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. And then the fun cherry on top was that George Russell got his first ever podium in Formula One.